Welcome to the Epic Beaker Laboratory EUEA. This is your end user engagement activity. I know you've already been through your Epic U training. So today we're basically just going to hit on some Atrium specific workflows and show you some tips and tricks in Epic. I am Jessica King. I'm the Epic Beaker Principal Trainer. I've also been a medical technologist for pushing 30 years. So the first thing that we want to do is try to find our playground. So this is honestly the hardest thing that we will do during this class. To find your playground, if you will go to your intranet and open it just like you're going to People Connect. It might take just a second to load. From your People Connect, if you will find the box that says Take Me To and use that little arrow to drop it down and find your web apps. So click on that web apps and you'll have to log in with your Atrium username and password. That's going to bring you to your web apps. Now mine may look a little different than yours. What we want to find is the play hyperspace, the red icon with the sliding board. It's a playground, so you got to have a sliding board. And make sure it says Encompass Practice underneath. That's very important. So we're not using the same one you use for your Epic U classes. This one is built specific for Atrium. So if you double click on that, that's going to open your playground. But before you do that, let me show you what you're going to be logging in as today. So we're all going to be fake people. And we're all going to be logging in as medical technologist. So here will be your username. Everyone's password is train. And then this will be your patient's last name. And once you're in the playground, make sure if you're searching for your patient, it has this -AH for Atrium Health. So if you'll take a second to just jot down whichever user you want to be, or take a screenshot so you can refer back to it. And I'll give you just a second to jot down that information. And you can use any of these that you want to. So once you have that information, we're going to use that to log into our playground. So let me emphasize one more time, we're using the Play Hyperspace Encompass Practice. So I'm just going to double click on that. Mine's being a little slow today. Okay, so at the very top of your screen, it's going to say Hyperspace Playground. Your user ID will be whichever one you chose. So I'm going to be AH LabTech 00. Password is train, like a choo-choo train, and it is not CAP specific. I can either one click login or just enter on my keyboard. Now my department is defaulting as Core Lab. At Go Live, of course, you're going to want to change this department to wherever you are working. But today we're going to be playing at CMC Lab. So I'm just going to type in CMC space lab and enter. My very first option is CMC Lab. I can click enter on my keyboard or click accept. Just click OK through the message of the day. And this is going to be the default screen for my medical technologist, okay? So if you have different functionality within the lab, your default screens will be a little different, and I'll point that out as we go along. So this is a report setting for my med techs. So if you're working in special coag chemistry, etc., you can choose these, and that's going to show just those specimens. But today we're going to come down and we're going to find the CP non-micro template. So CP non-micro template. I'm going to click on it one time. And then I'm going to come straight down to this little box at the bottom that says My Default. So all that does is that keeps me from having to search for it in the future. Then I'm going to click Run. And there's quite a few specimens, so it takes it a second to load. And there is all the specimens that have been collected and received into the lab. So again, that is for my medical technologists. That will be your default screen. So we're going to back up and we're going to start with phlebotomy. In Epic, if you are searching for an activity, you have a couple of ways you can do that. You have your main toolbar, which can be personalized, and we can go over that at Go Live. It really doesn't help to do it in training because it won't stick. You have your big fat Epic button here, and if I go to Lab, I can search for different activities. Or if I want to do it the quick and easy way, I'm going to come over to this little magnifying glass in the corner, and I'm just going to type in whatever I'm looking for. You can just type in a few letters. Epic will do a comparison match and give you some options. So I'm going to type in PAT. The first option is my patient list, and that's the one I want. So I'm going to select patient list. So before you log on to your rovers, you do have to come into your PC and set up your list. Under the patient list, because you'll notice the list is currently empty, there is an edit list. So we want to click this edit list and create my list, which is the first option. In Epic, when you see this stop sign, it means you have to give it some information. Now it's just asking you, what do you want to name this list? You can name it anything you want to. You can name it the Queen's List. You can name it the best phlebotomist in the world list. You don't even have to call it a list. You can call it anything you want to. So I'm just going to call mine Jesse's List. So once you have named the list, if you will come to the middle of that box, you will see these two little pieces of paper that says copy. So we want to select that copy. And all this is going to do is copy a list that's already created. You can scroll down and find your list, but it's easiest just to start typing something. So today, if you will please type AHCMCIN, space IN. You see it's already started to give me some selections, and this is the one I want, this AHCMC inpatient draw list. Once I select that, I just say accept. And then where this green check mark is, I click accept again. Now my list is still empty. So to find my list and put it into the list I just created, I'm going to come to this available list. And I'm going to come down almost to the bottom of my screen where I see the syringe that says inpatient draw list. When I open that folder, it gives me more options. Again, you would choose whatever the facility you're working at. But today we want to find AHCMC inpatient draw list, which is right here. And you'll notice it's a folder too. So open that folder. And then in the real world, you would select whatever floor you're working on. But today we want to see all lab draws. So the syringe with the CMC, all lab draws right here. So if I click on that, you'll see my magnifying glass. Think in a minute. There's quite a few patients on this list. So now it has loaded my patients. But I want these patients to be in my list. There's a couple of ways you can do that. You can grab this with your mouse and drag it until that Ghostbuster sign turns into a plus sign and drop it. Or you can right click on it and send to whatever you named your list. So once I have done that, now all these patients are under my list. At this point, I can then log onto my rover and those patients will populate for me. If for some reason you don't have a rover and you're having to collect from a PC, it's super simple. Instead of scrolling through all these patients, I have a search box right here in the corner of my screen. And all I have to do is type in the patient's name or their medical record number. So today, I'm going to be using patient, I think it's Shably, Shalby. First name, Irene, and just click enter on my keyboard. And oh, I spelled it wrong. There it is. So here is my patient. That makes it a lot more aesthetic to the eye. So I'm not looking at all that list of patients. It gives me a little bit of information where the patient's located, their age, and in the production, it would tell you where they are at. At the bottom of the screen, it tells me everything this patient has ordered. If I scroll on down, it would tell me if this was a nurse collect. But it's not. This is for a lab collect. So I told you we had a main toolbar. Inside your activities, such as your patient list, you have an activity toolbar. So if I actually want to collect this patient, I'm going to click right here where it says collect. So that little tube of blood, I hit collect, and this opens my collection screen. This will show you your order of draw. You can use the X if there's something you do not want to collect. It does not cancel the test. It just puts it back on the collection activity to be collected at a later time. For example, maybe this patient wasn't fasting, so you could just X off that lipid panel. If I scroll on down a little bit, Epic tells me that it's automatically canceled some orders for me because they were duplicate. I can open that chevron and it tells me exactly what it was. So someone placed a BMP on this patient. Well, since a BMP is in a CMP, it knew to go ahead and cancel that for me. This in the orange is just a training environment glitch. So you can actually just click that X if you don't want to look at that. At the very bottom of the screen, it does have a collection question. And it says, has your patient been fasting for 8 hours? So you can say yes or no. I'm going to say yes. If I needed to put in a comment, I have my comment box. I'm going to scroll up and I want you to notice I have some blue hyperlinks here. If I needed to change the performing lab, I can do that straight from here. So maybe this is going to core lab or this is going to, I don't know, AREP or LabCorp. I can change that information, but I'm going to leave it as it is. And at the very bottom of that box, I'm going to hit print labels. So at this point, those labels would print. You'll notice these specimens now have accession numbers. I have another blue hyperlink. So if I needed to change something about this collection information, I would click that, or I could scan the label and change anything I needed to change here. So maybe I wasn't the one that collected it, someone else did. Or maybe this was a capillary collect or a central line. So again, you can change it, you can add a comment, whatever you need to do. The easiest thing to do if nothing needs to be changed is just to use the next tab over, which is collect all. That's going to say, okay, I have put the collection information in for all these specimens. And then you just click accept. And you have now collected and documented that patient. So it's pretty simple. Again, 99.9% of the time, my inpatient phlebotomist will be using your Rover. So I'm going to jump to the outpatient world. If you are an outpatient phlebotomist, you will not be using a patient list, you will be collecting from a schedule. To find that schedule, these tabs right here are called your startup activities. And don't worry, there's not a test, you won't have to know that. But the third one over is your schedule. And if you'll notice, I take my mouse and I just put it over something. It tells me what it is. It's called Hover to Discover. So I'm going to use that schedule. So that's the third option over. And this is how your patients will display. So all these are lab patients. So I'm going to the physician's office. I work in the lab. These patients I'll have lab scheduled. My registrar person puts them on my schedule, and they come into the lab and I can quickly see their orders. I want to show you a little trick. Right here where it says CMC Lab Department, all providers, there's a little arrow. If I click that arrow, straight down is a push pin. If I click that push pin, to me, this makes it more pleasing to the eye. I now have a calendar and I have my schedule. I have my CMC lab schedule where all these patients are scheduled. And under that, I would have my provider schedules. So, for example, if I was the patient and I came in to see Dr. Burns and I was there, I don't know, just because I'm feeling really tired and irritable, well, he would say, Jessica, that's because you're old. But I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to order a CBC and a TSH on you. So at that point, when I come to the lab to find those orders, you would actually click on Dr. Burns's schedule because I wasn't scheduled for lab. I was scheduled to see my provider, but you would find those orders under your provider's schedule. If it's just a lab visit, you're going to see it on your lab schedule. So to look at these patients, I'm going to scroll down here and I'm going to find, I don't know, I'll just click on any patient. I'll use Cheerios here. Let's see if, well, he don't have anything ordered. So I'm going to use Cabby here. When I click on her one time, my report pane shows open orders. So this shows me future orders that are placed on this patient. Two little words of advice. You can add additional reports. So if I click on the magnifying glass in this box, it's going to show me some options. Now in live, you'll have many more. I could see their immunization summary, their rooming report, their meds, allergies. Two that I highly recommend will be your snapshot and your visit orders. Now, of course, you don't want to have to search for these on every patient. So again, you have a wrench. So if I click on the wrench right beside that open orders box, I'm going to use the first option, add or remove buttons from the toolbar. You can again use your magnifying glass to search, or you can just start typing in. So I want to see the snapshot. Type in snap. And I also want to see visit orders. If I want my visit orders to be above snapshot, I highlight it and use these arrows to move it up and down. And it just rearranges it for me. I'm going to click accept. And now I have 2 additional tabs that will be there on every patient. So first I want to show you the snapshot. Snapshot is a 90,000-foot view of your patient. So you have your patient demographics, you have the problem list, their health maintenance, immunizations, pretty much everything you need to see on this patient. For my lab people, visit orders is going to be very important for you. Your visit orders are going to show you orders needing specimen collection. You can release the orders from here. You can collect the orders from here. So for this patient, I'm going to double click on them. So if I double click, double click over here. This shows me orders that have been placed on this patient. So any of them that have this purple box, that's a future order. The little green one is a standing order. So if I click that lipid panel, I'm sorry, I clicked the wrong one. If I click the lipid panel, I can release that order. So if it was a future order like this diabetes screen, I can release it. And let me grab where to go. I've got 2 lipids on this patient for some reason, so I'll do that RPR. And you'll notice, and it's kind of important for outpatient, just make sure that these are not already in progress or finalized. It's because, of course, they've already been collected and you can't recollect them. So you want to find the ones that have today's date and have not been collected. So you can just use the boxes in the corner to select the ones you want to collect. And then just like for the inpatient, we're going to hit collect specimen on your activity toolbar. This is going to look familiar to you. It looks exactly the same as the inpatient collection. So here's your order of draw. There's your performing lab. It too has a collection question. And I'm going to say, actually, no, he's not been fasting. At this point, you'll come down to print labels. Again, you can change information if you need to. But I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to collect all. And as an outpatient, you're going to want to go ahead and click receive. This receives it into your facility, so into your clinic or into your doctor's office, wherever you're working. And you're done. So it's pretty easy to use. You'll just double click on your patient and then click 3 times across the bottom. Now for my outpatient people, since you have received that into your facility, you need to create a packing list to send it to wherever the test is going to be performed. This is also for my inpatient people. So if you are a specimen processor and you have specimens that need to go to core lab or lab core or a rep, you will put those specimens on a packing list. Your packing list are temperature specific. So you'll have your frozen, your ambient, and your refrigerated. And it will not let you put say an ambient specimen on a frozen packing list. It'll just come up and say, nope, you can't do that. To find your packing list, we're going to use our chart search again. So again, I'm coming to the magnifying glass in the corner, and I'm just going to type in PAC. First option is packing list editor. Now, I've been playing this morning, so I already have one that has been created, but I'm going to create a new one. So at the bottom of that box, I have a create. So if I click that radio button, it goes ahead, it blows in my list type as Core Lab because that's the one I always use, and I know I have specimens on there. You have that magnifying glass. You can search for whatever you need to. So you'll notice here's your LabCorp frozen, here's your LabCorp refrigerated, mayo, so on and so forth. But I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do Core Lab ambient packing list. Now, if you do have a pathology specimen, that does have to go on a pathology packing list. I'm going to click accept. I'm actually going to jot down that packing list number. And at this point, I would just use my scanner and I would scan those specimens onto my packing list. However, I don't have a scanner. So if for whatever reason you did not have a scanner, you can still put those specimens on a packing list. To do that, you're going to come into this activity toolbar until you find send out bench. So right here is your send out bench. Everything I have collected and received into my lab that fits this particular packing list shows on my send out bench. This is also a great end of the day checklist. So when you're ready to close up shop, this list should be empty. Everything should have been sent to where it needs to go. So since I don't have a scanner, I'm just going to grab some of these specimens and click Add Test. That adds them down here in the bottom pane of my screen. And then once those have been added, I'm going to come straight up and click Ready. When I click Ready, it just puts this packing list in stasis. It's just sitting here. It also prints out my packing list, so I have a hard copy. So at this point, I can actually close out of that and I can go back. I can do anything I need to do, inpatient, outpatient, and then I have another specimen that fits that particular packing list. So here's your little epic trick. Under your epic button, everything that we've played with today shows up right under that epic button. Clicking that push pin makes it a favorite, so it will always be there. If I unclick the push pin, it falls back down into the list. So you'll notice I click that again, it bolds it, and it says number 2. And you can have as many as you want. So you can have as many favorites as you want. That just keeps you from constantly coming over here and typing in what you're looking for. So if you have something you use frequently, you can pin it as a favorite. So I'm going to click right back into that packing list editor. And this time I'm going to select one. Now I had clicked expand earlier. So that shows me the packing list that I have that have not been sent to where they need to go. So I have one that's ready. That's the one I just made. And I have another one that's sitting out here that's just open, just ready for anybody to add whatever they need to it. I'm going to click this first one and say accept. And right there is the ones I just created. At this point, I'm going to click unready. And I can add more specimens to it by scanning them on. If for some reason this patient said, hey, you know what, my labs need to go to LabCorp because of my insurance, I can go in, I can delete that and take it off. I can do whatever I need to do. The most important thing about your packing list is once you are finished, once your courier's there or on the way, you need to ready it. That's going to print you out a new packing list. And then pick it up. When you pick up your packing list, it's closed. You can't add to it. You can't take away from it. It's done. So you'll notice it says it's picked up. It sent those specimens across the interface, and the receiving lab can now receive those specimens in. If you don't pick it up, when they get the specimens, they cannot receive them. So it's important when you're done, when your courier's there, to click picked up. So that is our packing list, and both outpatient and inpatient will be using packing list. It also helps us keep track of the specimens. So I'm going to go ahead and close that. And I want to show you your receiving activity. To find your receiving activity, it's here on my main toolbar, or again, I can use my Epic button or my chart search. So I'm going to click receiving. And if you are a specimen processor, this will be your default screen. It defaults to scan. So again, you're going to just act like you're in the Walmart self-checkout and beep, beep, beep. It automatically receives those specimens in lab. It drops charges, puts it on the text outstanding list, and sends it to the analyzer. But we're going to play like today we don't have a scanner because we don't have a scanner. If you need to bring anything in manually, you're going to want to come across to this specimen lookup. So play like you're Sherlock Holmes and you're looking up clues. So there's your specimen lookup. If you know your specimen ID, you can type it in here, or your packing list, you can type it in here, or your patient. So you can use a patient name or a medical record number. So I'm going to use Albin Alicia patient and just click enter. And this is what I was saying at the very beginning, to make sure that your patients have this -AH after their name. So I'm going to accept that. And you see Miss Alicia has quite a few specimens. If you just wanted to bring in just this CBC, you notice it's highlighted. It's that dark blue. I'm going to come down to the middle of my screen, right-hand side, and click Receive. Now it's going to say, you know, we gave you this fancy scanner, Miss Jessica. Why are you not using it? Well, I had to sell it on eBay to buy gas. I'm just saying. So you do have to give it an override reason. So I'm going to say my scanner is broken and accept that. Accept one more time. And you'll notice I now have this big green banner that says this specimen has been received. And I can click to my next specimen, and this one is now green. So green means go, you're good. So that's all there is to receiving a specimen. But we all know nothing ever goes the way it's supposed to, not in the lab anyway. So if you get a specimen, such as this T bilirubin, and you notice some details down here in the side of the screen, there's no date and time. Well, I'm going to go ahead and receive it anyway. And it says, oh, no, you're not. Gives me a big red box. Stop, look, something's wrong. And it tells me exactly what's missing. You don't have a collection date or time. So at this point, I'm going to have to call Phil because he was the one that collected it. And unfortunately, Phil is busy. He cannot speak to me right now. And we're going to play like this is a stat. Maybe this is a T-Billy on a newborn or something. And we need to get this in the lab so the analyst can get it on their analyzers and get it processed and resulted. So I know it was collected today, so I'm just going to use a T for today. And for my time, I'm going to put in 0222. Now this is an Atrium specific workflow. So when I put in that fake time, it will now let me receive that specimen. However, the text cannot verify it. So, if at all possible, we need to follow up on this. If you cannot, then it becomes the tech's responsibility. So I want to show you where that specimen is now living. I'm going to use my magnifying glass, my chart search again, and I'm just going to type in FOL. The very first option is my follow-up work list. So it does default to my follow-ups. So we need to change the views so we can see that collection time follow-up work list. So views, it has the two little gears right here. If I click on that, the first option is AH022 collection time. That's the one I want to use. And there is my Alicia patient. So I'm going to play like Phil called me back, or I called him again, and I was able to speak with him, and he told me that that specimen was collected at maybe 8 o'clock this morning. So this information you really don't need to worry about. What we do want to do is come over to the hamburger. So you'll see that little hamburger or spaceship. It's actually an actions button. So if I click on that, it's elliptical with a circle around it, and come down to the tube of blood with a pencil. This is your specimen update. So you can update anything you need to on a specimen from specimen update. You can change the priority. You can say, I couldn't get a green top tube, I had to get a gold top tube. This was a capillary collection. Whatever you need to change. You can even put specimen flags on from here. The only thing that I really need to worry about at this point is my collection time. So he said he collected that at 8 o'clock. So I'm just going to change that collection time. And then I'm going to come right under this edit specimen information and click accept. Once I have done that, my documentation is complete. And at the very bottom of the screen, I can hit complete. Now it does come up with a little box saying, hey, do you want to put any other comments in? You do not have to. You have already documented, so this would technically be double documentation. And you can actually say, don't show me this again, and accept it. Now Alicia has fallen off our list, the collection time's updated, and the text can verify that specimen. So at this point, we're going to move on to requisition entry. So your requisitions are for what I call blood in the bag. So you have a specimen, but you don't have a patient. So this may be coming from a nursing home, a home health, or even a physician office that is not on Epic. So any place that cannot put the orders in electronically, we're going to get a paper order, and we're just going to put that in requisition entry. So I have it on my main toolbar right here, requisition entry, or you could use your chart search. So for my requisition entry, your submitter is where is this specimen coming from? So let's pretend this is coming from Pavilion. So I'm just going to type in PAV and enter, and it gives me some options, and it's the first one. And then I need to put in my patient's name. So I'm going to play like, my patient's never been seen at this provider before. The patient's not ever been seen at Atrium Health before. So I'm going to use Smith. And I'm going to give it as much information as I can. I am a female, and a social security number, and the date of birth. And that's not my real birth date, not the year anyway. I'm sorry, I messed up right there. No. And Email. Oh, let me clear that out. I think I did something wrong. Okay. Try. I don't know what's wrong with it all of a sudden. Okay. So I'm just going to put in the name. I think I was giving a little bit too much information. So I'm going to say this is a new patient. I'm not going to say new in reg because this is not our patient. This is Pavilion's patient. So I'm just going to say new. And I'm saying, okay, now give me more information. Okay. And new. So now Jessica Smith is in the system. If you know the address, you can put that in. It'll probably be on the requisition form. But I'm going to say that I don't know it. So I'm just going to pop down to my diagnosis. And I'm going to use Z00.0, which is a common one. And of course, they didn't put the provider on it, so I can't put it in. But I can order my test. And let's say they just ordered a UA on this patient. So I'm going to find my urinalysis with reflex to microscopic culture. So once I have my orders in, I'm going to click Create Specimen. And okay. What does it not like? Oh, it don't like it. It's got the wrong lab. So I'll just do UA. Out the culture. And again, that's just a training environment glitch. So I'm going to hit Create Specimen. Oh, are you serious? Oh, there it went. So it's giving me a session number. I need to put my date and time in. So T for today. And I'll say this was collected H minus 3, which is 3 hours ago. Then I'm going to hit receive. And it doesn't really look like it does anything. But if I hit receive again, it says, oh, no. Wait, there's nothing there. You've already received it. So at this point, since I don't have a provider in here, I can go ahead and perform this test, but there's nowhere to send the results. So at this point, we're going to go to another follow-up work list. So you can either want to use your chart search, or if you have this little person with the arrow pointing to them, that is your follow-up work list. This time I need to change my views and come down and find requisition missing items. So it's AH requisition missing items. And there's quite a few on here. But if you'll notice at the very bottom, there's Miss Jessica Smith. Oh, she's such a problem child. So if I click on Jessica, and at this point, I've called Pavilion and they said, oh, yeah, that's Dr. Whitecoat's patient. I can actually just double click on that and it pops me right back into that requisition. So at this point, I can say this is Dr. Whitecoat's patient and accept that. So you'll see it says accept in new. So if I had a new requisition, I could just accept a new and it would pop me into a new requisition entry. Or I can use the little drop down and just say accept. Pops me right back to that follow-up work list, and Jessica has now fallen off. So she has been completed and those results will go back to Dr. Whitecoat. So that is your requisition entry, follow-up work list. And it doesn't just have to be your providers. If you don't have a submitter, you can use a default submitter, and you'll have to, of course, go in and put in the correct information when you get it. So the next thing I want to cover under receiving is if you get a body fluid. We do those just a little different. So I'm going to come to your receiving activity, and I'm actually going to get rid of Alicia. So I just selected all of hers, and I'm going to click remove. That doesn't do anything to the specimens. I don't have to look at them anymore. But I want to look at my Irene patient. And she has had a CSF. She's had a lumbar spinal fluid specimen collected. And you'll notice all these CSF, some of these are going out, and it tells me at the bottom, hey, be sure you're sending this to the correct testing facility. But I want to show you, if I scroll down a little bit here to my tracking, here are my tests, and here are my tubes. So every test is on every tube. So that's going to make it extremely difficult to process this specimen. So before I receive this into my lab, I want to aliquot it out. And you can do this with any specimen you need to aliquot. So with my specimen highlighted, I'm going to click Containers. This brings up all my tubes, all my tests. And I can just say, hey, I want specific tests on specific tubes. If I need an additional tube, I'm going to click this Add Aliquot. And it gives me aliquot tube 5. And I'll say I just want to put some in there just maybe to freeze it in case they want to do an additional send out test or whatever. So once I accept that, my tracking changes, and I have different tests on different tubes at this point. Now I can receive that into my lab and distribute those to the different sections that they need to go to. So that's just a little helpful hint if you get a body fluid that you need to make sure that specific tests are on specific tubes. Any specimen that you need to aliquot, you just hit your containers and aliquot that out to additional aliquot tubes. So once you are finished with a specimen, you can actually do your storage in Epic. It's also a container activity, but it's called container storage. So I'm going to use my chart search and do container storage. So I just typed in CONT, first option, container storage. And for your container storage, I'm going to use my magnifying glass, and of course you'll use wherever you're at, but today in training, I'm just going to use this rack 1 and accept and accept. Now I'm going to cheat just a second because I don't have a scanner. I'm going to pop back into a patient and grab a specimen ID. So I'll use this specimen right here. I'm just going to copy it and then pop back into my container storage. So in the real world, I would just scan these specimens on. Since I don't have a scanner, I'm cheating and I'm just, pasting that specimen in there, or I could type it in. And when I click enter, it has now stored that specimen for me. And if you'll notice, it lets me know just by the colors of my tube what they are. So these are aliquot tubes. That's of course an EDTA tube. And then these are your CSF that we just played with. If you need to remove a specimen, so maybe I need to take this one out and send it out or do more testing on it, I just select it and click remove, or I can dispose of it. You can also use your scanner to do the same thing. If you want to dispose of the entire rack or remove the entire rack, that option is at the bottom of your screen. You also have the additional activities to jump into specimen inquiry to look at this patient that I was just playing with. And it tells me, look, this has been put in storage and I can remove it straight from my specimen inquiry screen. Or I can update the specimen for whatever reason. Maybe the collection time and date was wrong. Maybe it wasn't a lumbar puncture. It was CSF pull, whatever. So you can just jump from screen to screen without having to search. So it's extremely useful. So that is your container storage. So I'm going to close out of my storage. I'm also going to close out of my patients. And the rest of this presentation will be for my medical technologist. We're going to go over some resulting scenarios. So as a medical technologist, your default screen will be this very first startup activity. And this is your outstanding list. You can, just by glancing at this, get a lot of information. So you have your container, you have your patient name, whatever the test is, your ID, and noticed I skipped over these, and I'll tell you why in just a second. I can grab these, pull it over. This is the time it was received. This is my turnaround time remaining, and your turnaround time does start at receiving. So as soon as the specimen is received into the lab, your TAT starts. Now, I think I said earlier, Epic is so amazing that if you take your mouse and you put it over something, it will tell you what that is. It's called Hover to Discover. Well, these very important little columns right here, it don't tell you crap. I mean, come on now. Let me tell you. The very first one is your priority. So is it stat, critical stat, Superman stat, epic stat? Let you know. It'll give you this little red arrow right there. The H is for your specimen holds. So is there a hold on this specimen? Maybe it needs the collection date and time updated. It's going to put a system hold on it. The A, is it normal or abnormal? R, is it resulted? If it is, you'll see that little piece of paper with the pencil. The M is your patient location. So is it inpatient or outpatient? Inpatient will be this little bed. Outpatient is the chart. O is going to be your specimen comment, and I don't have any. L is for your linearity, so it would have a little earthquake sign if you're out of linearity. So those are kind of important, and it would be good to know what they are. But it just gives you a really quick, I'm trying to pull this back across, and they don't want to let me. Anyway. So I can just look down through here and say, okay, this is abnormal and it is resulted. So it has come across my interface and this is an outpatient. So if I click on that one time, it opens up my report pane and it tells me exactly what my results are. It gives me a summary of the specimen. I can click on tracking, which will track the specimen all the way through the system from the time it was ordered until the time the results came across the interface. Until time it was verified and sent to the chart. It'll just keep going on and up. So you can track a specimen all the way through. Your more will be charges and communication, which I have none on this patient. Communication, that is. It's already dropped the charges for me. So if everything looks good on this patient, which it does, I can verify straight from my outstanding list. So on the bottom of my screen, I can verify that. Or if I wanted to repeat something, maybe I feel a little uneasy about, I don't know, maybe they typed in 23 instead of 24. I can prelim verify that. And I would just uncheck what I didn't want to go. So I can just say, I'm going to let everything go except for that, I don't know, total volume, whatever you wanted to do. So you can preliminary verify your chemistries, but I'm going to go ahead and verify. And it comes up and it says, hey, look at me. I've got some, I've got some low values here. Are you sure you want to let me go? Sure. So I'm going to confirm final. That now has went to the patient's chart. If it was an outpatient, it's hit the physician's in basket and they can look at the results. So you can verify straight from your outstanding list. So I'm going to make this just a little bit more easier for me to manage instead of looking at all these specimens. And I'm going to filter. I can filter by my patient's name or I can filter by the test simply by right clicking in that column. So if I just wanted to look at just my comps, that's all I'm going to see. If I just want to look at one patient or two patients, I'm going to filter by, and I'm just going to do doors and Irene. That's all I see, and I'm just seeing their comps. So I'm going to actually clear my filters on the test and come back and just filter by my patient. So I want to do Doris and I want to do Irene. So for my Irene, her T-Billy is completely normal. I'm going to go ahead and verify that, and I'm golden. Now you'll be on auto verification, so if it was that normal, you wouldn't even see it. It's going to auto verify. But I want to look at Miss Doris. Now she's got some stuff going on here. She's got some problems. So I'm going to look at her. I'm just going to double click on her comp to see what it says. So anything you need to put in manually, if you want to put a comment in, if you want to repeat a test, you will double click it from your outstanding list. So you'll see, you'll never have this ordered on a patient, ever. You have a basic, a comp, and a potassium. So this is trained. We're all in a make-believe world today. Well, I'm going to just play with this basic. And I see she has a critical potassium. So the first thing I'm going to do, because I'm older than dirt, is I'm going to repeat that test. So I have a repeat right there in the middle of my toolbar, middle of my screen, sorry. And it asks me, do you want to repeat the entire test or just one or two components? Well, I just want to do the potassium. So that's what I'm going to select. Now, it would grab it on my analyzer, run it back through, and give me that second result. You'll notice there's now a number 2 in front of that potassium. Well, as this is repeating, of course, my interface goes down, so I need to enter this manually. To do that, I'm going to click Edit and just type in whatever my second result was. And I'm going to say this time it actually repeated at 2.1. Woohoo! Still critical low. So me being me, and most lab techs were extremely OCD, I'm going to come over to this C column with that little piece of paper, and I'm just going to say, hey guys, I repeated this, and it repeated as critical. And at this point, I'm going to come straight up to my activity toolbar where it says Final Verify, and click that. And it comes up all in red, screaming at me, are you sure you want to confirm this? Yep, sure do. It's gone. So I know if you're a med tech, you probably just had a small heart attack, and I'm really sorry about that. But we have at Atrium Health what is called closed loop critical communication. And you'll see on this big orange flag, critical results, closed loop critical communication. What that means is this has went to the patient's chart. It has hit the physician's in basket or the provider, and they have 15 minutes to acknowledge this result. So if they acknowledge this within 15 minutes, you don't have to do anything. You're wonderful. If they don't, then you're going to have to call it. So where did it go? How do I know I'm going to have to follow up on this? I mean, I'm busy. I can't keep checking back every 15 minutes to see if this has been followed up on by going into the patient's chart. Well, guess what, guys? We have another follow-up work list. So I'm going to go right back to my little person with the arrow pointing at him. And this time I'm going to change my views to this AH critical results, open closed loop result communication, my lab. And bam, right there's my DOORS patient. So after 15 minutes, this is going to turn red. And that's when you're going to know I have to act on this. So this is just going to be however you want to get it in your mind as your workflow. Personally, as a tech, I'm working from my outstanding list. I would click this open and just, every little bit, just click back over there to see if anything's turned red. If it has, then I'm going to follow up on it. So we're going to pretend that Doris is red, which means her provider has not acknowledged this result. So at this point, I'm going to have to do the standard, which is call the provider. To do that, I'm going to come straight up to this com log. Now you can use com log for anything. It doesn't have to be a critical. It can be, you need this specimen redrawn if it's an outpatient, or you need it redrawn because it's Q&S, whatever, for outpatient. It does blow in all the information for my patient. It gives your provider, their phone number, and it defaults to critical result. Now you can change this to other and then put in a comment. It defaults to communicated, and you also have no answer and left message. So I'm going to go ahead and say this was communicated to, I'm going to say this is an inpatient, so I called it to a nurse on the floor. And it's read back and verified, and I can accept that. And I don't have to complete it or anything. It automatically just falls off my list. Now, for any of you who are still having heart palpitations, you don't have to do it this way. So if I go back to my result entry, and I'm going to come to this potassium here, and it's also critical. If you don't feel comfortable verifying that, you can use your communication log before you verify it. It works exactly the same way. So I would just call it to whoever. So I actually called this one to Dr. Burns, let's say, and accept that, and then I can verify it. So however you want to do it, completely up to you. Because I know some people, and I'm one of them, I'm old school. I feel very, very wonky about just letting that critical result go. So I'm going to close out of my result entry. And I'm going to go take a little break and mess around and whatever. Well, I come back and specimen processor, phlebotomist, whoever comes up and says, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, but that specimen I gave you on Doris was mislabeled. That's totally not the right patient. I'm so sorry. Okay, great. Well, I've already verified it. So now I have to do a corrected result. To do a corrected result, you're going to use your main toolbar and do this result entry and verification. So if you knew your specimen ID, you would just scan it in here. Unfortunately, I don't know it, so I'm going to click expand. And if I do an equal sign, it brings up the last patient I just looked at, and it's Irene. So I'm going to find, no, it wasn't Irene, it was Doris. So I'm going to type in Doris. So there's my Doris patient. And now I'm going to find that crazy BMP, CMP, potassium. And you'll notice in my specimen tree, the BMP and the potassium both have green check marks, which means they've been verified. So I'm going to play with this BMP just to show you. So this test was performed on the wrong patient or the wrong specimen. This is a little annoying, but unfortunately, this is the only way we can do it. So if I need to correct the result, I'm going to use my activity toolbar and find result correction. I am going to have to give a reason why I'm correcting this result. And I'm going to say test done on wrong patient. And confirm that correction. That opens up this main tool, this activity toolbar in the middle of my screen, and I can click back on edit. Now, unfortunately, if you do have a test that you need to take out all the results, it was done on the wrong patient, you're just going to backspace out of all that, take those results out. And as you notice, as I do that, I get stop signs, not only on my results, but on my comments. So as I continue to take these out, I have to come over to my comment, the little C field, and I have to put a comment on every component. So I'm just going to put test performed on wrong patient. Uh, to report called to whoever. Now, if you're not a keyboard person, you hate typing, you can highlight this, right click, and copy it, and then just paste it in the rest of your components. So once I have all that documented, I'm going to now final verify those results, and it's not pretty, guys. The report looks horrible, but it blows in everything that I documented and the blurbs that the systems automatically put in for me, and then just confirm final, and it goes to the patient's chart, it goes to the providers in baskets, and it's completed. The next step, and this is totally going to be on however your lab performs crediting a test. Now, some places I know only managers, supervisors can do it. Other places, any tech can do it. So if you do need to, at this point, credit this test because it was done on the wrong patient, you're going to use your specimen inquiry. Now, specimen inquiry is going to be your best friend. Right here on this activity toolbar is my specimen inquiry. You can always use your patient station, look up your patient, and then go into specimen inquiry. But I'm going to use this little shortcut, right? Oh, I use specimen update. So sorry. Right here, specimen inquiry. It's the second tab over. And I'm going to find that BMP. So it's right here. So this is my tracking. I'm going to scroll down and see that ugly report until I see my charge summary. On charge summary, there's that. Oh, somebody's already done my, I guess we've done this in an earlier class, but let's just say it was this comp All I have to do is come over and find this X. You're again going to have to give a reason. And my reason is test ordered on wrong patient, or you can put the comment in other test performed on wrong patient. What I do? I didn't say other. Now, test performed on wrong patient. And say yes. And now it has canceled all those charges. If for some reason they come back to you and say, hey, you know what, I'm just going crazy today, and that was the right patient, and you're like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Okay, whatever. You can actually click this little, it's supposed to be a dollar sign. I kind of think it looks like a camera, but that's just me. You can click that and it says, hey, do you want to re-trigger these charges? Yep, sure do. So just say yes, and it re-triggers those charges for you. So that's just going to be totally dependent on how your lab does that workflow. Like I say, some places only let your managers, supervisors do charges. Someplace anybody can do it. Any tech can do it. So I'm going to close out of Doris and close out of my result entry. And that's really all we have for HM specific workflows. Of course, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out at me at jessica.king@atrium.health. I will be more than glad to help you. We can set up one-on-one sessions, whatever you need to do. Remember, we will be on site at Go Live, so we will be there at your elbow if you need us. And it's going to be a little stressful the first day or two, but I promise once you build up your muscle memory, you know where to click to do what, you're absolutely going to love Epic. Like I say, I've been a tech for almost 30 years. It's the best system I've ever worked on. It's the Cadillac of EMR systems. I really think you're going to enjoy it. Thank you guys so much if you've made it this far. I appreciate your time, and please reach out if you have any questions.